Hey everybody, Yankee here. The other day I did a video on timing in revolvers and how I thought that was the number one mechanical issue that affects revolvers over time. And in that video I asked people, do you want me to do a video about what causes timing issues and how to possibly fix them? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes. A lot of people wanted to see an illustration that simply explained how does timing work? How does the mechanism, how does the clockwork of your gun actually function? And what happens when it gets out of time and how can you fix it? So let's get started here. And first we're going to have to look at the three major components when you're talking about timing. All right, first you have the cylinder, and more importantly, the cylinder star, although it doesn't usually look like star. It usually looks like either a pinwheel or a series of little posts, but you have the cylinder star, and then you have the cylinder lock. That's that little piece that pops up from the bottom of the frame and locks into that little notch on the cylinder, holding it in place. And then you have the hand or the foot or the paw or whatever they might call it. That's the part that actually locks up with the star and turns the cylinder. Now, when you see it working in this illustration, you're going to see it from the back side, so you're not going to see that unusual shape there. And we will discuss that shape in just a little bit. Okay, first let's discuss what happens when your gun is working properly. The first thing that happens when that hammer starts to go back, whether it's single action where you're cocking the hammer itself, or if it's double action where you're pulling the trigger, the first thing that happens is that hand starts to go up and it meets the star, and the little lock drops down, allowing the cylinder to move. Then the hand pushes upward on the star, rotating the cylinder. Now the lock actually springs back up at this point and starts to ride along the outside of the cylinder. Then the hand continues up, continues rotating the cylinder. And then once it has pushed the cylinder completely through the cycle, the lock will click back into place in the cylinder, the hand will drop down, and the gun is ready to fire. Now let's look at it a little faster with the forcing cone in place here. As you can see, the cylinder lines up with the forcing cone, and then everything goes through its cycle, and the next cylinder lines up with the forcing cone. This gun is in proper time. All right, now let's look at the two main reasons, the most common reasons that a gun will start to have timing issues. One, it's either damage to the hand or damage to the star. Now, the most common is the damage to the hand, because if you remember, the hand has that kind of weird shape. It's kind of pointy at the top, and that makes it more vulnerable to damage or wear. And you might say, well, then why did they put that point on it? Well, they need that point on it because during one part of the cycle, when the hand has pushed the cylinder all the way to the top, the other star point has to be able to rotate under it. So it has to have that open spot there, and it has that little slanty point that goes up to kind of a sharp point, because if it didn't have that, it would hook on that other point of the star on the way down. That sloped metal there allows it to slide over it easily. So it really does kind of need to be this shape, but because it's this shape, it is a little bit more prone to wear over time or damage. And when the hand is damaged, it doesn't push quite far enough every time it goes through the cycle. When it goes up and pushes that star around, since it's a little bit shorter now, when it gets to the top of the cycle, it isn't lining up with the forcing cone, and it isn't pushing the cylinder far enough that the cylinder lock can engage. So you've got an unlocked cylinder that isn't lined up with the forcing cone. And since the hand is the issue here, this will happen on every cylinder. Now, if you have a damaged point on your star, well, it's similar, because now it's not turning far enough on that one point. When the hand hits that point and pushes it all the way up, it doesn't go far enough, and it doesn't line up once again and doesn't lock up. But on the next cycle, it'll likely hit an undamaged star point, and it'll push it into proper alignment. So if you got one chamber that's not lining up and locking up, well, then it's probably a bad star. If it's happening on every cylinder, it's probably a bad hand. And the way you would repair these is buy a new part. replace the hand or replace the star. Now, when you do that, they might need a little fitting. You might need to take a little off of each one of those little points on the star or off the top of the hand. Usually it's the star that you would adjust a little bit, because that way you can adjust it for every individual chamber. And if you're not comfortable doing this, you'd probably want to have a gunsmith do this. I would recommend that anyway, but that is how it would get fixed. You would actually have to replace one of those two parts, maybe both. If I was going to fix it, I'd probably replace both, just to be starting from scratch with both a hand and a star. But those two things right there are the most common causes for timing issues. Now, one issue I didn't cover in this illustration is damage to the actual cylinder stop, but that's not really a timing issue as much as it is a lockup issue, so it's not really relevant to this video, but that's why you shouldn't slam your cylinders home and stuff like that, because you can damage that actual cylinder stop and then your gun won't lock up properly, even though the timing is correct. So, like I said, there's the most common reasons a gun goes out of time. It seems like it's complicated when you think about revolver timing, but it's actually very simple. It's one of the most simple mechanisms you can actually deal with. It isn't hard to understand, and it isn't hard to repair if you got a little knowledge and a little confidence. An autistic chimp could be trained to do it. So I think you can do it too, and I know that's putting a lot of faith in you, thinking you're as good as an autistic chimp. But if I can do it, you can do it. And like I said, it's really easy to understand and almost as easy to fix.